others here are saying people need to continue following the mitigation efforts, but you're also saying again, the cure must not be worse than the problem. Which is it?
No, I'm just saying we have to get this country open, Jeff. It has to get open. This country was not designed to be closed. So we have the greatest we've ever had, and then we're paying people to stay home? Think of it. We're paying people not to go to work. How about that? How does that play? And they want to go to work, by the way. They don't want money. This country is great. But we're paying people. We have to get back to work. That's what I'm saying. Go ahead, please.
President, this is off topic. It's about the announcement from last night. It's a yes or no question, but not that we expect the answer to be yes or no. But wasn't Michael Atkinson doing the job of the Inspector General of the intelligence community, the job he was supposed to do, when he simply took the whistleblower complaint to Congress that what hadn't been taken previously? Wasn't he doing the job that he was supposed to do, that American taxpayers were paying him to do? And why did you decide to terminate?
I thought he did a terrible job. Absolutely terrible. He took a whistleblower report, which turned out to be a fake report. It was fake. It was totally wrong. It was about my conversation with the president of Ukraine. He took a fake report and he brought it to Congress with an emergency, okay? Not a big Trump fan, that I can tell you. Instead of saying, and we offered this to him, no, we will take the conversation. Well, fortunately, we had a transcript. If we didn't have a transcript with the kind of deception and dishonesty that were practiced by the Democrats, I might not be standing here right now, okay? Fortunately, we had a transcript, and it was a perfect transcript because even the lieutenant colonel admitted it was correct. Okay, wait a minute. You asked the question. So he took this whistleblower, and I keep saying, where's the whistleblower, right? And why was the whistleblower allowed to do this? Why was he allowed to be, you call it fraudulent or incorrect transcript? So we offered this IG, I don't know him, I don't think I ever met him. He never even came in to see me. How can you do that without seeing the person? Never came in to see me, never requested to see me. He took this terrible, inaccurate whistleblower report, right? And he brought it to Congress. We offered to have him see my exact conversation. It was all about the conversation, by the way. That was the whole thing. It was about the conversation, right? And then after he saw it, he must have said, wow, because as I've said it many times, and it drives you people crazy, it was a perfect conversation. So instead of going and saying, gee, this is a terrible thing he said about the president's conversation. Well, it was a fraud. I didn't say that. And by the way, you have the whistleblower. Where's the informer, right? And here's another question. Remember, before I gave the transcript, in other words, before I revealed the real conversation, where's the second whistleblower? Remember the second whistleblower? Wait. There was going to be a second whistleblower. But after I gave the conversation, he just went away. He miraculously went away. Where's the informer? Because there was going to be this informer. Maybe Schiff was the informer. You ever think of that? He's a corrupt guy. He's a corrupt politician. So listen, I say this. Where's the informer? Remember, the informer was coming forward. But I gave. Because, see, I did one thing that surprised everybody. This gentleman right here said, boy, that was a shocker. I revealed the conversation.
Absolutely.
From Ukraine, I didn't
Praise the Lord.
Approval.
And you're exactly right, Mr. President. And they're still trying to get you with the dumb thing. Crooked,
with 196
swamp.
to nothing vote by the Republicans, not one dissenting Republican vote. Dishonest Democrats impeached a president of the United States.
Absolutely.
That man is a disgrace to IGs. All right, let's go next, please. He's a total disgrace.
Did you run by your decision to dismiss the Inspector General by Senator?
We'll get off this because people want to talk about what we're talking about, but let me just tell you something. That's my decision. I have the absolute right. Even the fake news last night said he has the absolute right to do it. But ask him, why didn't you go and see the actual conversation? There was no rush. He said, oh, we have to rush it. He even said it was politically biased. He actually said that. The report could have been, you know who the whistleblower is, and so do you, and so does everybody in this room, and so do I. Everybody knows, but they give this whistleblower a status that he doesn't deserve. He's a fake whistleblower. And frankly, somebody ought to sue his ass off. All right, it's enough of the whistleblower. Go ahead, please.
The governor of New York today said that he is still desperate for ventilators and that he has accepted 1,000 of them from the Chinese government. Are you concerned that
what he didn't say is, okay, let me tell you what he didn't say. Two very good friends of mine brought him those ventilators, right? Two very good friends of mine. They brought them. If you'd like their name, I'll give you their name. No, but the governor didn't mention that. It came through the Chinese, the country of China. But they were given by two friends of mine. But he didn't tell you that. Now, the governor also, you'll see when you read the letter, the governor also asked for 40,000. He wanted 40,000 ventilators. Now, the governor, as you know, had a chance to get 16,000 a few years ago. He decided not to get that. The state of New York has asked for help. I've given him 4 hospitals, 4 medical centers. Then I gave him an additional hospital. Then I gave him military people to operate the hospital. They were not supposed to be COVID hospitals. The ship is not. Interesting thing happened with the ship. People aren't in accidents because there's nobody driving. There's nobody taking motorcycle rides down the West Side Highway at 100 miles an hour. People are away. So people aren't being injured. Now they're asking whether or not we could open up the ship for COVID. We have given the governor of New York more than anybody has ever been given in a long time. I'll just say, I was going to say in history, but in a long time. And I think he's happy. But I think that, because I watched what he said today, and it was fine. I wouldn't say gracious. It wasn't gracious. It was okay. I must tell you, Gavin Newsom has been gracious. Los Angeles, California, with the job we've done, and all of California.
Why does that matter if they're gracious or not gracious?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But I think when we've given as much as we've given to New York, somebody should say, nice. I'll tell you who's been very nice. Mayor de Blasio has been very nice. He understands what we've given him. We brought him some more ventilators too yesterday. But nobody has been given like New York. And I know he appreciates it. He just can't quite get the words out, but that's okay.
When he says that he needs 3,000.
Please, go ahead.
Come back to Dr. Fauci's comments on...
To which one?
Dr. Fauci's comments on mitigation. On the reproductive value of the virus, the WHO had it at, I think, 2 to 2.6. Others had it a percentage point or 2 higher. Do we have a new number now based on those mitigation techniques? Have we managed to bring it down?
Well, Deb, I think maybe you should answer that, right? Dr. Birx, please? Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
You know, it's an excellent question, and it's why all of the modelers, and I really want to thank them again, they're reevaluating all of their models in light of the level of the impact of the mitigation. Remember, none of us had really been through this before. So when we modeled school closures and distancing and staying at home and all of these pieces, that had never really come into the model before. They're working on that very diligently now. Of course, just to be clear, we won't know how valid the models are until we move all the way through the epidemic. What we're triangulating right now, and instead of working on R0, we're looking at testing and triangulating testing, test positive cases, hospitalizations, ICUs, and of course, the recoveries, because that's also very important to us. I think it's very important that the American people know that there are equal number of states with less than 5% positives despite high levels of testing. So there are states that are mitigating and making this work. There are also the states that you know of, the 18 states that have the larger outbreaks, and we're watching them very carefully, triangulating for them all of the information to ensure that clients who come to the hospital are cared for. And then there's states in the middle that we're trying to figure out, are they changing or not? Each of those states and each of those epidemics within those states may have a different R value. And that is what we're trying to figure out. And it's very variable on each of these factors. But the bottom line is, and I think going into this weekend, it's really important for the American people to know this. Spain and Italy are moving through this. They are seeing their number of cases drop. They're seeing the number of people in hospitals drop. We are on our models and on the actual data, about 12 days behind them. At the same time, we see in the United States really good case studies of the impact at Washington State, of California, and then a series of smaller states where we're trying to learn from them how to do surveillance. And with these new HHS, Abbott ID Now kits, and I just want to thank Admiral Gerard for getting them out, being able to look at testing in a more comprehensive way so we can be doing surveillance and mitigation simultaneously so we can answer that very question. It's going to be very difficult to answer at this moment across the United States because each metro cluster is on a different pathway as they move through the epidemic. And I think we just really ought to emphasize through, because we see Italy, we see Spain moving through, and we hope to be in that same position. At the same time, as the president said, he's concerned about every single person that is succumbing to this virus. We all are. And that's why we're making sure that in this triangulation, they're tracking minute by minute. When we say FEMA and HHS is tracking minute by minute the ventilator, hospital, and ICU bed need, that's exactly what's happening. And also being flexible and responsive. To have DOD take 1,000 healthcare providers out of their medical corps is a very big deal. I was in the medical corps for 29 years. We never did that. So this is saying we respect and understand the importance and value of the American lives and doing that. But our values will be variable by state.
A week ago we were talking about county by county.
Before I do that, you had breaking news last night. You know that, you saw that, where I think the probable presidential candidate for the Democrats will be Joe Biden. And he agreed that I was correct when I stopped people from China very early, very, very early, from coming into our country. And Dr. Fauci said that was a very big moment because it would be a much different picture we have right now had we allowed thousands and thousands of people from a specific area, I don't have to go into it, from China, to come in highly infected. It would have been a very different thing. The other thing, so I appreciate the fact that he did, because I was called xenophobic, racist, I was called many things when I did that very early. And I got a lot of credit for it in the Federalist, because the Federalist covered the whole journey. And they said Trump was, I didn't speak to the author, respected author. They said Trump was right at every single move. And on top of that, he was going through a fake impeachment, a hoax. I was going through a hoax when I made the decision. And that does take a little time, and certainly a little.
That is certainly true.
But I appreciated the fact that Joe Biden announced last night that he now agrees that I was correct. You saw the report come out that I was correct when I stopped people from China coming in at a very early date.
President, can you talk about the Captain Crozier of the USS?
Which one? What?
Captain Crozier, who was removed. Captain who was removed as the commander of the USS Roosevelt. I don't know if you saw the videos of sailors cheering for him as he left. Our reporting shows that some sailors have said that they are worried to re-enlist because they are not convinced that commanders are taking care of their health and taking care of them.
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
Well, I don't know much about it. I can only tell you this. Here we have one of the greatest ships in the world, nuclear aircraft carrier, incredible ship, with thousands and thousands of people. And you had about 120 that were infected. Now, I guess the captain stopped in Vietnam and people got off in Vietnam. Perhaps you don't do that in the middle of a pandemic or something that looked like it was going to be. You know, history would say you don't necessarily stop and let your sailors get off, number one. But more importantly, he wrote a letter. The letter was a 5-page letter from a captain. And the letter was all over the place. That's not appropriate. I don't think that's appropriate. And these are tough people. These are tough, strong people. I thought it looked terrible, to be honest with you. Now, they made their decision. I didn't make the decision. Secretary of Defense was involved, and a lot of people were involved. I thought it was terrible what he did. To write a letter? I mean, this isn't a class on literature. This is a captain of a massive ship that's nuclear powered. And he shouldn't be talking that way in a letter. He could call and ask and suggest. But he stopped in Vietnam. A lot of people got off the boat. They came back and they had infection. And I thought it was inappropriate for the captain of a ship to do. I don't want to comment as to whether or not, but I agree with their decision 100%. In the back, please.
Joe Biden actually just attacked you in a tweet. I don't know if you have seen it.
He just what?
Attacked you. He just said.
Well, he didn't write anything. Look, he has people, he has professionals from the Democrats
Mr. President, let
writing.
me just read what he said. He said Donald Trump is not responsible for the coronavirus, but he is responsible for failing to prepare our nation to respond to it. How do you respond to that, sir?
He didn't write that. That was done by a Democrat operative. He doesn't write. He's probably not even watching right now. And if he is, he doesn't understand what he's watching. But just so you understand, it was very nice what they wrote out. I don't know, they released it at a strange time, sort of a strange time to release something like that. But he admitted I was right. And if you read the Federalist story, which most of you won't, because you don't want to, but you'd learn something, because if you go, it goes through a chart, times. I was early. Dr. Fauci, I don't think he's changed his mind, but he said it was a very important step when we stopped China from coming in from the specific area that was heavily infected. We'd have a whole different thing right now. So
Absolutely.
I don't really know what Joe Biden said. I don't really care. And again, I see every once in a while I'll say something, I'll make a speech, and then it'll be critiqued, and I'll get this beautiful, brilliant critique. Joe Biden didn't write that. Joe Biden didn't write that. He wished he did, but he didn't. Go ahead, please. Back.
Sure. Wanted to ask Dr. Fauci a quick question. China has warned of a resurgence of the virus. Has the U.S. developed a plan if, in fact, a second wave of the virus does, in fact, occur here in the country?
Yes, we do. I mean, one of the things that obviously is parallel with thinking about the possibility, as I mentioned a little while ago, about mitigation allowing us to turn the corner very much on the front burner, is what happens when we do, because the risk of there being a resurgence is real. So what we need to do, and I believe I said this before, but it's worth repeating, that what we need to have in place, and we will have that in place, is that as you then pull back, you have to have the capability of, in a very pristine, precise way, do the kind of containment when you do see it. Because remember, when you get to mitigation, containment takes the back seat because you're just struggling to mitigate. But when you get it down, you need to make sure it doesn't resurge. So that will require the ability to test, to identify, to isolate, and to do contact tracing. That's what we have to have in place, and hopefully we will at the time that we then pull back.
Question for Dr. Ron. You mentioned the plasma, sir. So these are plasma that people that were infected that have now either recovered or doing well enough, and then they're transferring it to, is it family members? Can you walk us through that's working? Is it kind of like a case-by-case basis in hospitals? What are the results from that? I just was not familiar with that.
So this is a situation where someone who's recovered from the virus, doesn't have the virus in their system at all, you can take plasma, and this is a pretty routine procedure. You can actually donate a couple times a week, a couple times a month, frankly, and give that plasma. That plasma contains the proteins in the blood that have the antibodies against the virus. You can take that, process it, and then give it to someone who's ill. And so that allows you to transfer that immunity. It doesn't have to be matched by family or anything like that. Since last Tuesday, the Tuesday before last, we've allowed academic centers and other laboratories and hospitals around the country to do this on a compassionate use basis. What we did was we pulled this together in what's called an expanded access program and run it through the Red Cross because they've got the greatest system and capacity for doing this. And this allows us to scale up so that when people get sick, we can actually have these donated plasma packs given to the patients who are sick.
So are people need to be donating plasma? So obviously some of us don't know if we've had it or recovered. What should people be doing?
So we've started with the Red Cross in this program. We made an announcement yesterday. We are planning to actually scale that up, and we'll have more information this week because we want to make sure we have the systems in place. It's a superb question.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. President, can you clarify the situation with 3M right now? Germany said that there was an act of piracy, that 200,000 masks were apparently diverted from Thailand to the United States instead of to Berlin. Is that miscommunication? Did that actually happen? And should 3M be fulfilling contracts?
We're very disappointed in 3M. They should be taking care of our country, and they can sell to others, but they should be taking care of our country. The people that have dealt with them have dealt successfully with many companies over the last month. They don't like the way 3M has treated our country. They don't frankly like the representatives of 3M. and no act of you said piracy, right? Piracy?
For German.
There's been no act of piracy. Now, there's been no act of piracy. It's the opposite. 3M has not treated our country well. And if they do, great. And if they don't, they're going to have a hell of a price to pay. Okay? I say it that way. And I watched him on television on something talking about how this is so hard to believe, so hard to fathom. They ought to get their act together, because I got involved and I looked at what happened, and they have not, 3M has not treated our country well.
Just clarify about that German order.
Go ahead,
Was
please.
that the verdict, or was that not?
We'll get you the information.
Fauci. I was wondering about what you're seeing as far as these patients in regards to coronavirus. I know the president mentioned this earlier, but what is the medicine saying?
What is the question? Is that what is the incidence of coronavirus?
If you have lupus, do you have a greater chance of getting coronavirus?
There's right now, this is being looked at in a natural history study. We don't have any definitive information to be able to make any comment on that. It's an obvious good question, because it might be a way for us to get some interesting and potentially important data as to the role of those medications. But that's something that is now being looked at, but we don't have any data to be able to say anything definitively.
And I hope they use the hydroxychloroquine, and they can also do it with Z-Pak, subject to your doctor's approval and all of that. But I hope they use it, because I'll tell you what do you have to lose? In some cases, they're in bad shape. What do you have to lose? It's been out there for a long time, and I hope they use it. And they're going to look at with doctors, work with doctors, get what you have to get. But we have it stockpiled, and we have a lot of it, and we're getting more of it. And as I told you, I spoke to Prime Minister Modi, we're getting more of it, but we have a lot of it. And I hope they use it, because it's been used for a long time, and therefore it's passed the safety test. FDA has been terrific. Dr. Hahn, I appreciate it very much too. But I've seen some results. Now, it's early, I guess, it's early, but they should look at the lupus thing. I don't know what it says, but there's a rumor out there that, because it takes care of lupus very effectively, as I understand it, it's a drug that's used for lupus. So there's a study out there that says people that have lupus haven't been catching this virus. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Why don't you investigate that? And there's also other studies, with the malaria, that the malaria countries have very little people that take this drug for malaria, which is very effective for malaria, that those countries have very little of this virus. I don't know, you're going to check it out. But I think people should, if it were me, in fact, I might do it anyway. I may take it, okay? I may take it. And I'll have to ask my doctors about that, but I may take it. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Mr. President, last week, the last couple of days, you've been really optimistic about Russia and Saudi Arabia coming together on the deal on oil. But in the last 24 hours, the OPEC Plus meeting's been pushed back. They've traded some really
Well, OPEC can do whatever. Look, I've been against OPEC all my life. Because what is it? It's an illegal, you could call it a cartel, you could call it a monopoly, you had a lot of different names for it. But it broke down very violently. Very violently. So I don't care about OPEC. I really don't. I couldn't care less about OPEC. Let me just say, no. I think they're going to settle it. You know why? Because they're going to be destroyed. They're destroying themselves if they don't. Russia, it's a very important, and we had a very good conversation, President Putin and myself, very good. But Russia, a big part of their economic well-being is from oil. Well, oil is at a record low. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. It's actually lower than you even think. And it's to their advantage. Obviously, it's to Saudi Arabia's advantage. They told me they're discussing, Saudi Arabia went much further than that. He thinks that a deal is going to be made at 10 million barrels reduction, and maybe more than that. He actually indicated it would most likely be much more than that. So we'll see what happens. I mean, we're going to see what happens. But as far as OPEC is concerned, I mean, I was against OPEC for years and years because I thought it was very unfair to our country. The beautiful thing is we have built one of the great, one of the things we've done is created so much we produce. We're the #1 producer in the world right now. I don't like it for a different reason, because it's going to hurt a lot of jobs in our country, this price. It's going to hurt a lot of jobs. Now, with all of that being said, people are going to be paying 90 cents a gallon. Did you ever hear of that? What's that, 1952 or something? All right? So from that standpoint, but you know what? I am a big believer in our great energy business, and we're going to take care of our energy business. And if I have to do tariffs on oil coming from outside, or if I have to do something to protect our thousands and tens of thousands of energy workers and our great companies that produce all these jobs, I'll do whatever I have to do. Okay, yeah, ma'am, go ahead.
Yeah, you tweeted a little while ago about how sad it is for kids they don't have Little League right now. And I'm wondering if you're willing to share about your youngest son and how he's dealing with life in sheltering in place, not going to school, no sports.
Well, he's a good athlete, and he loves soccer, and he's like everyone else. I mean, everything's shut down. He's in his room, he's happy, but he's not as happy as he could be. He'd like to be playing sports, Barron. And let's see what happens. But we have to get back. We have to get back. Remember that. We have to get back, and we have to get back soon. Okay?
On the jobs reports numbers.
You guys ever stop? Do you want to keep going for a little while? Huh? I mean, do you ever stop? How many times you ask? And in many cases, it's the same. Actually, a lot of good questions. Go ahead. But keep going, yes?
Yes, sir.
So you're not going to blame me that I kept it going too long? People said, oh, we kept... Every time you'll ask it, no. I mean, no, it's amazing. Tell me. Every hand went up. I thought we'd gone through I think every single hand went up the last time. You know what it shows you? It shows you that you love what you do. Go ahead.
We do love what we do.
You do. No, you do. And some of you do it well. Not all of you. Go ahead. I'm not looking at you, by the way.
So we did get the jobs reports numbers yesterday. Obviously, that's kind of a small portion because it's only the first half of March. Was there anything in there that was any sign of optimism? Obviously, we all saw the numbers, down in retail, down in hospitality. Was there anything that you said, okay, maybe with this virus we will see some sort of net gain?
Look, the job numbers are what they are. We asked everybody to go home, don't work. So the numbers are going to be, astronomical. We understand that. I understood that. I know somebody said the numbers are meaningless, and then they took that to mean, oh, jobs don't mean anything, and it was just another fake news story. It wasn't me that said it, by the way. It was a very smart person, but they meant it by saying it really is what. That's why I answer your question very carefully. The numbers are what they are. We know the numbers were going to be massive, because we told everybody to go home and lock your door, essentially, right? Don't come to work. You can't come to work. Don't go outside. Don't breathe. Don't do anything. We got to open up our country. But I know that it's coming back. And in my opinion, it will come back very strong. There's a tremendous energy. There's a tremendous demand. And some good things have happened. I mean, I don't know. There's one habit that, as you know, most of you, a lot of you have covered me a long time before I did this. I was never a big believer in shaking hands. But I decided if you don't shake hands, you're not going to be winning a lot of contests. Right now, I'm not sure you have to shake hands anymore. A couple of people have told me, Debbie, you told me, that if we didn't shake hands, the incidence of flu's a big deal also. And that flu might be cut down in half. Who knew that shaking hands was such a bad thing? I felt it. I mean, I always felt it. And, I was never to a point where I can't shake somebody's hand. I knew people like that too, but there weren't too many of them. But when I ran for office, all of a sudden I'm shaking hundreds of hands. And if I don't, I wouldn't even be standing here. But I think that's a custom that maybe people don't have to. We have to get close together. We have to sit together at the stadiums. We have to sit next to each other and wrestle. All that stuff is going to happen. But I think the concept of shaking hands maybe is something that's going to be a little bit from the past. Let's see what happens. Maybe they'll go right back to shaking hands.
My last question today, how about that? Is there anything you want people to do to show their support, especially we have two doctors up there, to show their support for the medical community? Is there something that we see people clapping when nurses leave?
Well, we've seen a lot of that. You might say something that I have seen such support. I saw this morning where everyone's they're clapping for fire department, they're clapping for police, but they are really going. These people are what? You know what they're like? They're like Tony. They're like warriors, Mike. They're like warriors. They were going into Elmhurst Hospital, which has been tragic, right near where I grew up in Queens. Going in, and the people in buildings are going. I mean, they're the rock stars. They're warriors. Nurses, doctors, first responders, what they're going through. And they don't even know what's going to happen. I mean, they go in, And by the way, even if they have great equipment, they're catching it. Great equipment. They have good equipment, they catch it. They catch it with good, with bad. It is evil. But Tony, you might say something, and Mike, you may say something about that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that question, because I don't think people can really fully appreciate the extraordinary effort of these people. I mean, it's amazing. I did all of my medical training in New York City in a big, busy New York City hospital at a time when it was just what you normally see in a hospital. I came to NIH and I spent about 5 to 8 years in the very early years of the AIDS epidemic, which was just the darkest years of my life, because almost every single one of my patients died. And yet, as we knew epidemiologically, that there was very little risk. There was a small risk, but very little risk of getting infected from a patient. To see now what these brave warriors are doing in the hospitals, not only giving life-saving treatment to people, but every single day putting themselves at risk for themselves and their family, I just think that the American public owe a phenomenal debt of gratitude for these people. And they should just salute them in every way you can. When we were at war, and at the height of the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, when you're at an airport and you see somebody with a uniform come by, everybody do that. I think that's what we should do when we see healthcare workers, just applaud them.
Pretty much what's happening. Mike, please.
The stories are incredibly moving about what healthcare workers are doing every day. It's not just that they're going back into the hospital in places like New York and New Jersey, earlier than that in Washington State and California where this first began. It's not just that they're providing care to people, but because of the nature of how contagious the coronavirus is, they're also supplementing for family. I mean, that's what gets to me. When I hear the stories that, understandably, in nursing homes and in hospitals, they're restricting visitors, then they should, to prevent the spread of the virus to be brought into the hospital or to be brought out. And so to hear the stories of healthcare workers who are holding up an iPhone while someone who's critically ill with the coronavirus may well be saying their last goodbyes to their family, and then to be there in those moments. I mean, our healthcare workers they're not just doctors and nurses today, they're supplementing for family, for people all across the country. And I just think, tomorrow's Palm Sunday. It's Holy Week in the great Christian tradition. And I have people ask me from time to time, send me an email or on the many conference calls that we have, they say, what can we be praying about? And my first thought is with the families who have lost loved ones and the patients who are struggling with coronavirus. But during this very special week, I just encourage people to pray for our healthcare workers. Pray for them and their families. They are really the hands and feet every day, not just of healthcare, but of the heart of the American people. And we are all grateful for them every hour of the day.
And think also
Thank you,
about
Mike
the
Pence.
Army Corps of Engineers.
Beautiful.
That's a little different, depending on where they are and where they're working. But the Army Corps of Engineers, throwing up a hospital in New York City, 2,500 beds in 3 days? I mean, think of that. And FEMA, what they're doing. And the National Guard is now delivering for the states because the states were unable to get. We drop it at a big warehouse where we're told to drop it. And the states were unable, some of the states were unable to bring it from the warehouse to the site. So we got the National Guard to become a delivery service, if you can believe it, and they would bring it. And some of those sites were dangerous sites. They were very dangerous sites. Think of that. It's been amazing. It's been amazing. I just think, I've never seen anything like it. I'm so proud of this country. And really, it's a world problem, and some countries in the world are just handling it so well. You know, again, I keep saying it's 151. That was as of 2-3 days ago. It's probably more. Some people said they didn't know there were that many countries. That's how big this is. And Mike said something else. So, yeah, Palm Sunday, tomorrow. Think of it. We're not going to churches on Palm Sunday. But think of next Sunday, Easter. And I brought it up before. I said, maybe we could allow special for churches. Maybe we could talk about it. Maybe we could allow them with great separation outside on Easter Sunday. I don't know, it's something we should talk about. But somebody did say that, well, then you're sort of opening it up to that little, do we want to take a chance on doing that when we've been doing so well? But Easter Sunday, Palm Sunday, I'm going to be watching tomorrow, live from Riverside, California, great church. But I'm going to be watching on a computer, right? On a laptop. I think on Easter, maybe I'll be watching from a laptop as opposed. So how sad is it that we have Easter Palm and Easter Sunday, and people are watching on laptops and computers? It's sad. But the job that this whole country has done is amazing. But I'll say this, our medical professionals, what they've done, because they walk into those hospitals, you see them putting on their gear, and they're putting it on as they're walking through the front doors. And some of those people are gonna die. They're gonna die. It's like incredible. And we can say what we want, Tony and Deb, about young and medium-aged, and there are plenty of those people dying too. It generally hits the older people where they have problems. It hits young people too, and it hits middle-aged people too. But these people are walking into hospitals that I watch. I think it's incredible. And they're putting their outfit, they're getting it, and they're going in. It's like a war. Again, there's never been anything so contagious as this. In 1917, it was vicious if you got it, but it wasn't contagious like this. Now, in 1917, had they had the internet and all the means of communication, they could have practiced distancing. By the time people started thinking in those terms, they lost, I guess, 75 to 100 million people. So that's modern, that's a modern day great thing that happened. Please.
Antibodies. To what extent do you think that you can use antibody tests to determine who can go back to work and how?
Well, I don't know. I'd rather leave that to the doctor. Doctor, do you have an answer to that?
I think it'll be a tool.
We think it'll be a tool to help us get people back to work. It'll be additional information because, as you know, if you have an antibody, that means you're exposed and have recovered from it. That, with the information about diagnosis, should help.
But how quickly can you scale up this testing to determine on a large scale how many people can go back to work and have these antibodies?
So as you know, a couple weeks ago, we provided a great deal of regulatory flexibility around this. A lot of great developers have been working on this. Dr. Burke's put a call out to the academic labs around the country to do this, and we've been working very closely with a number of manufacturers. So we think that it can be scaled up relatively quickly.
Mr. President. Mr. President, a question for Dr. Fauci. In a recent interview, you had said that you knew the 15-day guidance would not be enough. I wanted to ask your confidence level about the 30-day guidance and whether it'll be enough.
It's tough to talk about levels of confidence, but I can tell you one thing that I feel strongly, that if we do in a very proactive way what I said in my opening comments, and people literally across the country as a baseline have that physical separation, and as we've mentioned,